We've talked about infinite banking on this show quite often, but how does it really work, especially if you're an active real estate investor? And more importantly, it's like, how do you get access to that capital that you so need so you can grow your wealth right now? That's what we're going to talk about with our guest, Chris Naugle, today. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you. You've waited so freaking long and you've worked so hard for that money, and you're now ready for that money to start working harder for you today. You want that cash flow. You want the passive income. You want to become work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to, so that you can not just be rich, but you can live a rich life. Because as you're blessed financially, you have a greater capacity not to bless your family, but also those around you as well. That is the ripple effect I'm here to create for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in, for binging on this show. And hey, being with us for some of you have been with us for the last 11 years. Thank you so much for being such faithful listeners. We could not do this without you. So thank you for being a part of this today. Hey, as a reminder, guys, if you ever want to dive deeper in the rabbit hole, we have more additional videos that we've stored for you on moneyripples.com. So be sure to check that out today. All right, guys, so I'm bringing on someone that's a special guest here, Chris Naugle. Now, I know some of you guys have been following him just like you followed me as well. So for some of you guys, this is not a new introduction, but for the rest of you, just so you know about Chris, like Chris is actually the founder and CEO of Money School and the Private Money Club. He's big on the infinite banking space, has been doing that as well. Former professional snowboarder and everything. So really glad to have him on and talk about his story and really about how is he using, what are his strategies he's used to create wealth? Is it just infinite banking? Is it real estate? Is it both? How is he doing it? I want to pull back the curtain and talk about that today. So Chris, welcome to our show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
Now, make sure I didn't get that wrong. You were a professional snowboarder, is that correct?
I was, yeah, from
Okay.
19 years old till 34. Nice long career of full of broken bones and torn ligaments and good stuff.
What was your story behind that? Like what's your backstory and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I just grew up in a normal middle class family. My mom raised me, and I remember when I was a kid, I was a big skateboard kid, and I lived out in the town, so it's not like I could just roam around the neighborhood. It was everything I did was in my backyard. So I built ramps, BMX tracks, and that was
Like a
just my
Tony Hawk
upbringing.
fan?
Yeah, of course. I mean, back then it was all the OGs, the movies, and that's what we did. We'd put the VHS tapes, showing my age, into the the VHS recorder or whatever you call them, and just watch them. Rad was my favorite movie of all time. But nonetheless, how I landed in snowboarding is my best friend Jack one day brings over this thing, and it was like a skateboard with bindings on it. And we went out in my mom's garage and we just started playing around with this thing. And he's like, it's a snowboard for the snow. It's like skateboarding or surfing on the snow. And I'm like, no way. So after that, I had asked my mom if, she could get me a snowboard for Christmas. And nonetheless, she gets me a used board, all the fluorescent gear. This is in the 80s, folks. This is
Mhm.
when snowboarding wasn't even allowed at all the resorts. It was a relatively new thing. And skiers, well, they didn't like snowboarders, but it didn't matter because I couldn't afford to go to the resorts. So where I lived in Lockport, New York, right up the street, we had this little hill where we used to take our dirt bikes up, and we had a little dirt bike track. So we would go up there and we would just hike the hill and we'd build a jump out of sticks and snow, and we'd jump it and jump it and jump it. Well, as things progressed, I started thinking, okay, I got this snowboarding thing down. So my best friend Jack took me to Kissing Bridge, a local ski resort, where I was to go up, and I felt like, hey, I've been practicing on this hill. I'm going to be a natural. Dude, I just got destroyed. I'll never forget that first run down. And this is Buffalo, New York, not mountains, hills. It took me forever to get to the bottom. I contemplated unstrapping this thing and walking down. But I didn't give up. I got, okay that day at doing one-sided turns. But after that, I remember I'm going to master this. So there was a country club by my mom's, and I would go and I would build jumps out of the sand traps because the country club was in a ravine. Every day after school, I'd go there, I'd build the jump, hike up the hill, hit the jump, and just do this over and over and over again. Watch the VHS videos, practice new tricks. Lo and behold, that's my story for how I made it in snowboarding. I literally just outworked all the other riders because I just didn't have the resources to do the thing. So I had to just get good at one thing, and that was jumping.
Do you find yourself still doing that in business today? Just trying to like
Absolutely.
hyper focus and just get really good.
It's weird how my brain works, and I'm sure I'm not alone, but yeah. So everything I do, let's just talk about speaking. When I decided I wanted to be a speaker, I literally would go out. We had this like little event center, and I would practice my speeches late at night till like midnight, and I would just do it over and over and over again. So much so that my mind, and I swear to you, my mind didn't know the difference that I wasn't speaking to anybody. I'd walk out to chairs. We'd set chairs up, and in my mind, I would have names of people in my mind. I would like Jim. So Jim, how do you buy cars? And I would
Mhm.
like Mary, do you have debt? And I would be talking to these invisible people in the crowds. And I just did it so much that when I went on a stage with a real audience, it was just natural.
Interesting. That's so cool. Well, how'd you get into the money space now? Like what transition there?
Yeah, so like I said, I was a snowboarder. Now, at the age of 16, I had a real job at a restaurant, but the owner of the restaurant treated me so badly that I was probably clinically depressed. But I'll never forget the day I quit that business or quit that job, and I had to have a plan. So for months, I had like visualized this day of quitting, and I couldn't just go home and tell mom that I quit my first job. So
Mhm.
I had this idea of a clothing line. So I came home after quitting, told my mom, said, "Mom, but I know I quit, but I'm going to start this clothing line in the basement. It's called Fat Clothing Company, PHAT. And here are the designs. And I'm going to print t shirts with my art teacher, Mr. Mahalski, after school. And I'm going to sell them to all my friends in school."
Mhm.
That's when I became an entrepreneur at 16 years old. The year was 1992. And after that, I had this clothing line. I'm selling it. All the shops that sponsored the snowboard events I rode in, I would consign my clothing there. I would sell my stuff on a wholesale basis. And then I met this guy, and he had a shop. And I remember we're sitting there. He bought some of my clothes, and he said, "Hey, do you want to go snowboarding?" And I'm like, "Yeah, when do you want to go?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, man, he's not going to close till 5." And he's like, "No, let's go right now." I looked around the shop and nobody was around. And I'm like, "Wait a second. What do you mean you want to go right now? Who's going to run the shop?" He's
Mhm.
like, "I own it. I'll just close it. We'll go ride." And that was it, dude. In my mind, that sealed the deal. I'm like,
Mhm.
I need my own shop. So I worked really hard, worked with a guy, Steve, who became my business partner, and we opened Fat Man Board Shop, PHAT, in 1994. So how did I get into the money space? Is I was running my retail shops, and then I'm also, snowboarding. It was the dream. It was living a dream. In what year would that have been? Early 2000s. We had opened 3 locations, and it was a day I was driving to our brand new boutique out by the ski resort, and I had heard of a plane hitting a tower and then another. And you all know that that's 9/11. And what followed 9/11 was the recession. I'd never been in a recession in my life. But being a business owner, being highly leveraged from opening 3 stores in a short amount of time, I felt the crunch huge. And I literally was not going to make it in business if I didn't figure a way to find a second job to pay my bills because the business was barely hanging on. And I remember I put my resume out. Now, bear in mind, at 16, I had one job outside of the farm that I worked on at 14, one job on my resume, very limited schooling. I barely, did any college because I was running a business.
Mhm.
And all I had was I'm an entrepreneur and a professional snowboarder. So everybody that got my resume didn't even respond. Plus, we're in a recession
Mhm.
except for one industry, and that was the financial industry. I got 2 interviews within the first month of my resume going out, and they were both Wall Street firms. And I've never put a suit on in my life. So, long story short, I entered Wall Street out of pure necessity.
Mhm.
And I ended up being really good at it. And then that forced a lot of things in my business that needed to happen. It forced me out of my business to work on it, not in it. And I was just doing the Wall Street thing. And I did that for 16 years. So you mentioned the financial advisors, anti-financial advisors. Listen,
Mhm.
I lived it for 16 years. And today I'm on your side of the fence, the anti-advisor, because that industry is very broken.
Yeah. After 16 years, like what is it you found? Because I know I was in it for 4 years, same time. I got in the same exact time as you did. Because yeah, they were hiring great back then. Um,
Well,
and it was a good time to learn too, because that was a
it was.
bad market to try to figure out how to get new clientele. But I know
Yeah.
I came up with my own perspective, and that's what got me into real estate in 2006. What was it that kind of got you disenfranchised with it?
Well, I always kind of knew something was wrong in the back of my mind. I just never really let it sink in because, I was making good money. And when I switched, I left one firm that I was at for 14 years and I went independent and I went into a small boutique RIA. And it was kind of cool because everything that I had been doing at the first firm on the advisory side worked with firms like this boutique that I now was, an IAR for. And that means investment advisor representative. You just work with an RIA, and I was working with hedge funds. I was working with traders in the dark pool. And when I got onto that side of the business, I started to see things. And literally, I remember saying to one of the traders, I'm like, dude, so this is just one giant sham that's ready to just fall apart. And he's like, well, you can look at it any way you want, but yeah, essentially, like it's pretty much held together with duct tape. And I saw that from the inside, but I also saw on the outside some really fake people. I saw people that acted like they really cared about their clients when at the end of the day, because I was in the inside, they didn't give a crap about the clients. And
Yeah.
I saw this over and over and over again. And for a long period of time, I was in that mode of just keeping up with the Joneses. One guy in the office would buy a new BMW and I'd have to go out and get one. And he'd get a new suit and I'd have to get one. You're always playing the charade of going back and forth. I was becoming one of them because remember, I come from a different mindset of an entrepreneur and a skateboard shop owner. So it never dawned on me that I was changing as a person to fit the mold of the person they wanted me to be that I wasn't ever going to be. And it's interesting how I ended up getting out of that industry because if I didn't have that opportunity, I don't think I ever would have left because I was making so much money, but I wouldn't be the same person I am today. That's for sure. So I don't want to get into too many of the nitty gritties, but let's just say it wasn't right for me and it's probably not right for most people. And I feel bad for the clients.
Yeah. It sounds like definitely as you were behind the curtain, you start to see the wizards back there and you're like,
It,
oh, okay.
it was bad,
Yeah.
really bad. And,
You
and
start
you
to
know, the
realize they're
funny,
the ones that make the most money, right?
well, the funny thing is it's just like I know what's coming. I just don't know when it's coming. And I know what's coming because I know how bad things have gotten on that other side, the wizard side.
Mhm.
And it's probably just starting to come untwined. And eventually we're going to see the wrath of all the mess that I saw from the inside.
What do you feel is coming?
I know for a fact what's coming. We're going to see a massive slowdown in the economy, and I think we'll probably see it starting next year. You're definitely going to see a recession and probably a doozy of a recession. I mean, listen, when I was in Wall Street, I followed economic trends. That was part of my job is to predict like how to invest, 6 months to a year from now. So I was working with a lot of those folks inside the brokerages, and all I can tell you is by all the signs, I can't believe we're not in a recession right now. I can't
Seriously.
believe things haven't fallen apart now. It is literally propped up so much by BlackRock, Blackstone, there's just so much money. And I guess I never really realized that when they printed all that money for COVID, 5.2 trillion or whatever it was, that's a lot of freaking money. And
Yeah.
that was all new dollars into the system. So when I was saying, oh, we're right at the end, we're gonna, things are gonna fall apart, I didn't realize how much money there really was in the system. And then a change of, presidency and everything kind of keeps everything going. But I know exactly where we're going and it's not good.
Yeah. At what point do you think it has to end, right? Because even now, the money supply, they're still pumping more in again. They
I
went
know.
down, now they're going back up. And makes you wonder at what point does the bubble get so big that it just has to pop?
Well, I think there's a lot of people since this is the longest bull run in history. Plus, anyone, if I don't, I might have this wrong by a year or two, but anyone 38 years old or younger has never felt the impact of a recession like we have.
Hmm.
I was an
That's right.
advisor at the end of one recession and I went all the way through 2008 as an advisor. And the folks today, like the younger generation, they've never felt the impact of that. So they don't even believe it's possible.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, I know you and I are only about a few weeks apart. We just found that out when we were on your show, like we're almost the same exact age and everything and went through very similar experiences. So it's really fascinating for sure.
I do want to
So,
preface one thing on that though. Even
yeah.
though I know it's coming, even though I know, the market's going to fall apart, I have zero money invested in equities. I still, you know, I can tell every person here, I can't time the market just like nobody can. Nobody can
Yeah.
time the market. But what I can tell you is I am prepared for what's coming. I am ready to seize the opportunity when it comes, which I can't say for any other period in time in my life. Every time I went through a recession or went through a hard economic time, I wasn't ready. And
Yeah.
now I am. And that's what I try to show people and try to teach people is how to be prepared for what's coming, because a lot of people are reactionary. When it happens, they react. It's too late. You got to
Right.
prep. It's like anything else. Like if you knew there was a hurricane coming, you'd board your windows up. You'd get ready. You'd stock up here in New York. If we know there's a blizzard coming, the grocery stores get emptied out and everybody kind of hunkers down. But yet the one thing that nobody ever plans for is the the one thing that has to happen, and that is a slowdown in the markets. And nobody gets prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. So true. What are you teaching people in your club right now? Like, what are you teaching them to prepare? Like, what are some of
Uh,
the things you're looking at?
Liquidity,
Hmm.
controlling their money, not giving up control of their money, making sure that they understand that the things that they think can never end certainly can, to understand that the gurus of the world like are probably steering you wrong. And right now, more so than any other time in my history, this is a time to sit on the sidelines because you actually get paid for sitting on the sidelines. I mean, right now in cash management, in bank accounts, you can get 3 to 3.5%. Listen, like,
Right.
some people will invest in riskier assets to get 3 to 6%. And right
Yeah.
now, in a treasury bond portfolio and bank accounts and CDs, you can literally get pretty close to that. So it's not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze in the markets. But I'll admit to everybody on your channel, and I would say the same to my audience, like, if you listen to me, you will miss out on gains, short-term gains that will make you feel good, that will give you that euphoria. But you will also be prepared when it all happens. And when the real opportunity presents itself, you will be able to seize that opportunity.
If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now.
But
That's
it
right.
comes at a
Because
cost.
that's the biggest problem, right? Like when crap hits the fan, that's the time when people no longer have cash. They're not liquid. If you're the one that's liquid, you get to control the rules.
Yeah, it's just at this point in time, you can get paid for being liquid. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, I know we do the IBC, the infinite banking concept, and we get paid really well by the insurance companies for that. Plus, we understand compounding interest. But in the general scheme for the average person, take IBC out of it, even a bank account is still paying you. You're still beating inflation with a bank account, with a savings account. Like, I don't remember any other time in my life, at least that, I would know what this means, where that was
Mhm.
possible.
Yeah. Tell us more about what you do, like with Private Money Club and everything you have going on. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, really, all I've done is I've taken and solved problems that existed in my life. So what I didn't get into is that Wall Street years, right? I retired from Wall Street in 2018. I sold my practice, but I didn't tell you why. And I did it because my wife and I had gotten into real estate. I got into real estate in '06, flipping the houses, almost went bankrupt in 2008 when I bought a
Mhm.
strip mall and bought a building and converted it to a strip mall for my retail stores. Then I bought apartment buildings from 2009 to 2014 and then had to sell them all because of banks. So, you and I both feel the same about banks. I hate
Yeah.
banks. And I hate banks because they've literally, I don't want to say they've destroyed my life, but they haven't helped it. So in 14, the banks froze my lines, called a mortgage or two of mine, and made it so that all those properties I bought from 2009 to 2014, 36 units, I had to sell them all because I wasn't in a fine. I didn't have liquidity. I was reliant on the banks. So
Yeah.
that's where that happened. So at that point in time, though, I was flipping houses after we had to sell all those. I took some of the money and I started flipping because I'm like, listen, if I can't hold the rentals because of the cash flow, I can do flips in, out, done, make 40 grand, 50 grand per did. And me and my wife did 272 flips in our time. We ended up getting a show on HGTV called Risky Builders. Now, remember I said I retired in 2018. You'll
Mhm.
know this, your audience wouldn't understand what this means, but every time I would take on a new entity or bring on a new partner or get something new, I'd have to go to my broker and I would have to get an OBA. I'd have to basically
Mhm.
kind of sit down and say, hey, it's me again. I need another one of those outside business activity approvals. And they'd give them to me, but I probably had 10 of them. And then I went to them and I said, hey, remember that show I was telling you about, that HGTV show? Well, we got approved. We got a national show. And she's like, I'm so happy for you, Chris, but now you got to make a decision. You're either going to be a financial advisor or you're going to be a TV show star because I can't approve an OBA for a national television show.
Hmm.
Just like that. I'm like, okay, decision made. I don't want this. I don't like what I see here anyway. I sold my business to this guy, Mike, and off I went. And that's how I got into real estate. But, well, not real estate, but got out of Wall Street and really went into Main Street. During that period of time, I was using my policies to fund the rehab and to buy some of the property. So I was using the infinite banking concept, but I wasn't at the levels I am now. I was just using it for, smaller deals. But at
Hmm.
the same time, I was kind of doing the infinite banking concept using my 401k that I had when I was in Wall Street. I was doing it using HELOCs. I was doing it using my self-directed IRAs. So I had all these different things going on, and I was using those to fund real estate. But while I was doing real estate, I also got really good at borrowing private money from individuals. I would just meet them, I would pitch a deal, and they would lend me money. They would either lend from their own policies, they would lend from, 401ks, wherever they had money. And I remember this guy, he tells me, he says, Chris, the ultimate in real estate is being the bank.
Mm.
I didn't let that sink in then because I wasn't the bank. I was borrowing from quote unquote their banks.
Yeah.
And it hit me one day after probably a couple hundred flips that every flip we did, the person who lent us money made just as much and sometimes more than we did. We did all the work. We took on all the risk. They were a first lien lender and we paid them every single month. And they basically just sat back and did nothing. And I'm just like, I want to be that guy. A
Hmm.
couple hundred flips is enough to strip the life out of you. Talk about
Yeah.
270 of them in a TV show. It's enough to literally make all your hair fall out of your head. But yet the lenders always made money. So COVID hits. We were deep into flipping. We had 91 rental doors plus all the other stuff. And in New York, where I live, the state essentially came on and said, I'm going to kind of make this easy, but tenants didn't have to pay rent.
Yeah.
Essentially, they kind of told tenants, hey, you don't have, if they didn't say don't pay rent, but they said you can't be kicked out if you don't pay rent.
Right. Which
So
is the same
guess
thing.
what? It's the same thing spun backwards.
Hmm.
So guess what my tenants did? Stopped paying rent.
Hmm.
1 month, 2 months, 6 months. I got so fed up with this. I got fed up with New York. I was in a very difficult mindset during that period of time. And I remember I said to my wife, I said, I'm selling them all. I'm selling every one of these pieces of you know what, and I'm going to take the money and we are going to be the bank. So I
Hmm.
did. I sold all, but I think we kept 6 properties, which we still have a few of those. I had a nice chunk of capital now, and I infused it all into my policies, into my private banking system. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the bank. So I was like, all right, well, where do I find people like me that I can lend money to? So I started going to RIAs. I started going online, and people would literally say, oh, yeah, we need money for a deal. I'm like, great, do you have a proposal or something? Kind of like what I was used to doing. I'd put together these nice proposals, comps, and all this stuff, and I'd give
Hmm.
it to the lenders, and I'd facilitate this beautiful, like, dog and pony show. But
Hmm.
when I was out there and I got the money and I'm on the other side of the fence and I'm going to these borrowers, on a piece of paper, they write an address and they hand it to me. Yeah, this is the property. I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? Well, this is the one. You said you wanted to lend money. I need money for this. I'm just like, what planet are you from?
Hmm.
Like, where's the comps? Where's the proposals? Where's the photos? Where's the stuff? Like, have you ever been to a bank? Like, this isn't how you present to a bank. So I literally formulated this idea, Chris, and I said, you know what? I said, this is a big problem. There isn't one. I thought of it like a dating site. I said, in a dating site, there's men and there's women and there's a community and they come together in this site and they go off, do dates, get married, have kids, all that good stuff. Like, why isn't there a dating site for money? And I
Right.
searched the website or the internet and I could not find anything that resembled what I wanted. And all I did is I drew a circle on a piece of paper and I said, there are 2 types of people in the world, only 2. Number one, there are people with money. And everybody that has money has a problem. And I identified the problem people with money have is they want to make more.
Hmm.
Simple. Problem identified. Then there are people who need money, people like I used to be, who need money for real estate deals. And those people need money to make money. I said, all I need to do is create a community, a dating site where people with money meet people that need money. They come together. We got a set of kind of procedures they go through where they communicate and they can post their deals and everybody solves everybody else's problem. People
Yeah.
with money get their problem solved by solving the problem of people who need money. So I literally created the first of its kind, and it was Private Money Club. Now, that was almost 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Today, there's almost 9,000 members. We've done hundreds of millions of dollars, and we just today literally launched a whole bunch of new updates to the site, and it is just growing like gangbusters. And all I did was solved a problem, and that problem was solved actually a little bit easier for me because on the other side, I was running, the BYOB stuff, be your own bank. And I was basically out there helping people with the infinite banking concept. So they all had money after they pay their debts off and everything else. So like, what do we do with money? And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
there's this free website called privatemoneyclub.com. You could lend money. And that's how I did it. And that's where I'm at today.
That's awesome. It's true. That's a huge value add, right? Because there are a lot of people looking for cash, but just like a lot of our listeners, they're also looking for a place to place cash, right? And
Yes.
what do they do? And they'll try to, like you said, matchmake them. It's like that matchmaker.com for real estate investing. That's what you basically created. That's really cool.
Precisely. And then I just, we put a bunch of education in there, which is, Money School. You had mentioned one of my companies, that's the education. And we just said, all right, we're going to teach people so that they know, like, and understand private lending, or know, like, and understand real estate. So they understand what it is they're investing in, what it is they're lending on, so they're not making mistakes. And we just gave them all those pieces of info and those best practices to do it in an effective way to minimize or mitigate the risks.
That's fantastic. Well, two last questions for you. The first one is with what's going on right now. Like you mentioned, like you think we're going to go into recession. Actually, you're
I
like,
do.
no, it's a fact. It's happening, right?
Has to happen.
And I agree with you. I totally agree with you on that one. What do you think? How you would think that will affect real estate? Do you think real estate will be a safer place to be? Do you think like that's going to be hurt too? What's your opinion on
Well,
that?
of course it'll be hurt because all tide, when the tide goes out, all boats, have to go out with the tide. But
Yeah.
real estate already got demolished. Let's not forget what happened to real estate. So real estate got demolished in 2008 because a lot of risky drivers and because of no equity. Everything was just phantom equity,
Hmm.
right? Today, there is legitimate equity. As a matter of fact, there was a study that was just done that compared debt in the United States, which is there's massive delinquencies and there's massive amounts of debt, but the debt to asset ratio in this country right now is the lowest it's ever been. And
Right.
that it's very strange. It's a weird dynamic. First time it's happened where people's debts are higher than they've ever been, but their assets are worth more than they've ever been. We've been through the longest bull run, so their 401ks are high. Their house appreciation has skyrocketed. So any real estate is worth a ton of money. So people right now literally are not lacking equity in their property. So
Hmm.
I don't see, and plus there's massive demand for property, although the demand was completely ignored and missed in the last 5 years, when everybody was building these apartment buildings, because they were building luxury apartment buildings when the market was saying we need affordable apartment buildings. But the
Yeah.
developers are like, oh, there's no money there. We're going to do these. And now they are suffering tremendously with double-digit vacancies. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. So I think real estate will maintain. I think it'll come
Mhm.
off its highs because demand, okay, and because it's not affordable right now. So
Mhm.
you'll see some pullback in pricing, but you won't see a catastrophic drop in real estate. And in the multifamily space, in the commercial space, you already saw that pullback. Literally, like
Yeah.
commercial real estate, meaning office buildings and multifamily, we're almost approaching 3 years that they've been in sort of like a recession because they've
Yeah.
depreciated so much because of liquidity drying up and everything else. So I think multifamily's already felt the impact. I think
Yeah.
single family to 4 units, I think you're going to see some pullback, but not much. So I think real estate could be a safer, notice I'm not saying that the safe haven, could be a
Mhm.
safer haven to store money in this next recession. I will tell you, equities will get demolished.
Yeah. Somebody even asked me that the other day. They're like, "Do you have anything in equities right now, Chris?" And I was like, let me go through it. Let me think. And I was like, "Nope,
I
nothing."
own a lot of treasuries, but
Yeah.
zero equities like you.
Yeah. No stock mutual fund, base type of things that are equity
Not a
based. No.
single nickel.
Yeah. It's that time's gone. So, but no, I agree. Like, and it's true. Like the real estate market is very different today than it was, especially 15 plus years ago. It's a very
Absolutely.
different market, way underbuilt compared to the overbuilding we had. It's really like you said, overbuilding and overlending is what we dealt with back then, where that's not the case today.
Not even close. And
Yeah.
matter of fact, I would say that lending has a lot of work to do
Oh
because they
yeah.
are just not lending, and that is hurting the demand. It's making demand higher and higher, and it's also making the pricing more unaffordable because it's just harder and harder to get money from banks.
Well, and people say, well, I don't think prices go higher. Well, if we do go into a recession, guess what they're probably going to do with interest rates, which of course makes
They
affordability
have to,
easier.
not
Yeah.
probably, they must drop
Yeah.
interest rates.
Yep. Especially when those treasury rates drop. When they drop, they're going to drop their Fed funds rate too. And that's
100%.
you're well, it actually treasuries drop. It doesn't matter what they do with the Fed funds rate. Your mortgage rate will drop with the treasuries. It's the, HELOC rates that are more tied to Feds. So
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I want to happen because if
yeah.
the yields come down because they've been elevated, I own a lot of long-term treasuries. So then the price skyrockets on the treasury. So I make a
Yeah.
bunch of money. I don't mean to be, self-serving here, but like, listen, like the inevitable is that's going to
Mhm.
happen. So if you understand the inverse relationship to treasury price and in yield, then you know why I own so many treasuries
That's
and
another reason
insurance
why I've
companies
got life
too.
insurance too, because they're
Yeah,
putting their money in
exactly.
treasuries as well.
Yeah, you want to not play that game? Just buy whole life insurance because that's exactly the game the insurance companies are playing with their general accounts.
Exactly. Well, it's been awesome. So, last question for you. This is obviously the Money Ripples podcast, right? And you talk about creating a ripple effect through people's lives. So, Chris, what do you feel is your ripple effect you're here to create?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'm extremely passionate about helping young folks, children, learn about money. And,
Yeah.
it started with a TEDx talk I did for my daughter, it's called A Letter to My Daughter, Rethink Money. And it's the six laws of wealth told in parables. And then I wrote my first children's book called The Companion, which is essentially about the infinite banking concept, but in a children's book and done kind of like the Giving Tree. So
Awesome.
my legacy will be, I only have one child, she's 5 now, will be her. But
Mm.
what I teach her, how I teach her, I will then take that and I will then share that with the world. And hopefully I can make a ripple, just a small, listen, the butterfly effect, if you will, like a flap of a butterfly's wing here could cause a hurricane over in some other area. If you believe that, then my little ripple of how I'm teaching my daughter and the education I'm putting it out there to the public, that will have a ripple effect that I hope in the future will change the way we handle money and change the way children in schooling teaches money.
I love it. That's so great, Chris. Well, Chris, I appreciate your time today. If they want to follow you, find you, whatever they want to do, engage with you in any way, shape, or form. What's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, it's easy. They can just go to YouTube and go to at the Chris Naugle, Naugle, or go to chrisnaugle.com and that'll be everything you need.
Awesome. Again, thank you for your time today. This was a fun conversation. Really good to get to know you better as well and hear more of your backstory. So, really appreciate you being here.
Appreciate you having me on.
Everybody else, hey, you can listen to these stories all day long, but at the end of the day, there were so many lessons that Chris taught us. There are so many different lessons about how you can even prepare for the inevitable recession coming. So, guys, don't just listen to this, but be also a doer of the word as well. Make it a wonderful and prosperous week. We'll see you later.